Now that's real. My name is Ryan Morris, and we are here with Rachel Bowman once again. Welcome, Rachel. Today we are going to talk about self-harm, which is a very, very heavy topic that is very personal to every community, I think. And as a warning, this discussion is for mature audiences, and if you have thoughts of self-harm or know someone who has, please seek professional help. We have resources linked in the description, including a hotline. Rachel, how you doing?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Episode 3, I'm hyped.
Yeah, definitely. It's
I'm
nice
very
to be
hyped.
back.
If you notice, I look a little different.
A little bit.
I did shave my head since the last time we saw each other. Feels a little weird in the winter, but I'll get over it.
Oh, yeah. You picked a good time to do it. Definitely. Nice and cold.
Yeah, and, we try to be cheery and things like that, but with a podcast of this nature, being real, a lot of times we talk about subjects that are really heavy and weigh on so many hearts, and self-harm is one of those topics.
Yeah.
In preparation for this, podcast, this episode, I did some research on self-harm, and I was shocked to see how many people go through this. Right?
Staggering, honestly. And from such a young age, too. Just being subjected to that and it not being a problem, it's almost like just part of life, which it's not, and the statistics are just mind-boggling sometimes when you're really just thinking about how many people that really adds up to,
Yeah, and for the audience, let me just read off some of the statistics just right off the bat, just to let this sink in while you listen to this. 17% of people will self-harm in their lifetime. And from the teenage years, it's 1 in 4 teen girls, 1 in 10 teen boys. That's so shocking.
Yeah.
So many teens in our culture. Well, not only teens, but it hits the teens the most, I think. In that age group where they're middle school, high school. A lot of things are happening at that time. And the average age for the first incident of self-harm is 13.
It's young. That's
so young. It's sad to see that, but that's the reality of this, and that's why we're having this discussion today, is to shine light on some of this. It almost is breathtaking. I don't know, it's a lot. I'm at a loss of words when I see these statistics and realize, 13. What was I doing at 13, man?
Yeah, parents thinking,
wow.
What are they doing at 13? Or parents who have 13-year-olds, what are they doing? Especially because that's kind of the age where you see the kids, how was your day? Fine.
Yeah.
How was school? Good. What'd you do? Nothing.
Yeah.
It's already hard to get anything out of your kid sometimes, and that's a personal thing that I know, have gone through those years of being a teenager and giving my parents kind of that very generic answer, even if things just aren't going well, it's it's fine. Don't want them to worry. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're good. And
fine never really means good, right?
Yeah.
Fine is, I forget, someone told me that once, it might have been Father Fitzpatrick, that whenever someone says fine, they're not actually good.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're having a good day. Yeah. So yeah, these facts are hard to see. 45% of people use cutting as the method. So a lot of people wonder, what are the methods of self-harm? Well, it seems that most of the time people are cutting themselves, cutting their skin to inflict self-injury. Does that shock you at all?
I think at this point it doesn't. Just because that was something when you, especially growing up as a young teenager, going into your teen years, it's you hear self-harm and your first thought is usually cutting. It's not something that's really shielded from people. You'll hear it in songs, you'll see it portrayed in movies and shows. You'll have close friends or other people who have kind of been a part of that, and it's so when you think of that, that's your first thought is cutting, and I think it's the easiest to do. I think it's the easiest to understand how to do it, and that's the problem, But yeah, when it comes to self-harm, I personally have my own experience in that. It was I was probably about 12 when I started, and then was about a sophomore in high school when I stopped. So that's about 5-6 years of that,
Wow.
you know, and that's a lot. And
Yeah.
I definitely didn't handle things the way I should have, but I was also so young that I didn't even know how to handle things or where to go when I got to certain points, and I was just feeling very lost, you know? And that seemed to make the most sense to me at that point because of a lot of the people I was spending time around in school or whatever else, the type of music I was listening to. Not saying music directly correlates, but
Yeah.
there was a little bit of like a lifestyle that I was kind of living during that point, and it was very dark, and it was very just cutting myself off from people and being isolated with myself because that's how I was feeling, you know. So
Wow.
yeah, it's very real, and it's very difficult sometimes when you're hearing people who have had their own experiences, and you're like, especially people that you were there for them and you just didn't know. And it's like, what could I have done different? What could I have done that
Yeah.
would have helped them during that point?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. This takes a lot of courage to bring up something that emotional that you've went through. Can you dive into what exactly self-harm is in your opinion? Because we talked about cutting, but I'm sure there's a lot of other different methods out there.
Yeah, so like we were talking about, self-harm usually seems like it's just a cutting thing, but it's really any type of just harming your body. That can be burning, that could be hitting, that could be hair pulling, you know, messing with your nails and, you know, stuff like that where you wouldn't even consider that being something that's self-harm, or even like keeping yourself from eating and stuff like that. Like you're harming yourself purposely.
Yeah.
And usually there's a reason behind that. And I think everyone usually has different reasonings. I know I do for my own personal experiences, but it can definitely vary. And some are definitely more concerning and more deep than others, but that doesn't invalidate anyone's experience or anyone's reasoning or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and since you brought it up, if you don't mind sharing, what made you, or what makes people decide to go about this method of inflicting?
I think for me personally, it was something I was hearing enough about, but not in a negative light. It was almost like, this is a solution to, you know, the crap that you're feeling. And this is a solution to when you're really feeling super out of it. What do you do? This, you know, not saying that it was brought to me as if it's okay, but not brought to me as this is an issue, you know? And for me personally, what got me into that was, you know, like I said, being around people who were also into that or talking about it like it was whatever. And just at that point in my life, I think I was feeling really out of control with how I was handling things. You know, I have school, I have home life, I have social life, I have all this other stuff. I have my own, just trying to find myself and who I am. And not feeling like I have control over a lot of that gets overwhelming. You know, especially when you're young and you're trying to grow up too fast and you feel like you're just falling behind. And for me, it was definitely this moment of like, I have control over this thing that I'm doing. I'm, you know, doing something and I'm getting an immediate reaction, immediate effect. And it's this moment of, you know, dopamine, of feeling like I'm doing something that I have control over completely. But that quickly snowballs into, I don't even need to be sad to do this anymore. You know, I feel like I have this open time to do nothing and I want something, a gratifying experience right now. Yeah. And that's what it becomes. Essentially, it's just an addiction. It's another addiction, but it's harming yourself. And that's something that it can take a while to kind of get out of and switch that mindset of this is okay to I need to focus my attention somewhere way different than where it is right now.
Wow. So in the beginning, it starts off as a sort of escape or distraction, but then you're saying it becomes addictive and you don't even need to have a reason anymore. Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it just becomes like, this is something I can do. That's in my power to do. I know how it feels. I've done it before. I know what it, you know, how it's going to feel the next day. And I've done it before. So what's stopping me from this time?
Is there any moment of regret, either during it or after?
There were definitely moments when there was, and I think it wasn't excuse me, it wasn't the actual act of it, but it was the fact that now I'm going to need to wear sweatshirts for a couple weeks and only wear a long sleeve. Or now I have to make sure that my parents don't see it at dinner. Or now I have to make sure that when I'm in gym with my friends, I don't move my arm too much to the point where they'll see something and be like, hey, what's that? And that's where I think the regret came from. And then further on, it was now like, I definitely, when looking at my scars, I don't have shame in them and I don't want to hide them because it definitely is a part of me growing up and getting to where I am now. But there definitely is regret when looking back in it. And it's like, there's so many other things that I could have put my time and attention to that wasn't that. And I could have saved myself a lot of hurt and saved my parents and my people around me who genuinely care for me. I could have saved them a lot of hurt too. Because as a parent looking at your child going through this, it's almost this feelings of like helplessness where it's like, what do I do? I can't just tell them to stop.
Yeah.
I can't take away their pain. What am I supposed to do? And so I think that's where some of that regret comes from. It's like I never want to see my mom cry, or my dad feeling like he just has no control over the situation anymore. And that's where the regret, I think, came from for the most part.
Yeah, it's really interesting because as the individual self-harming is seeking control, it's almost like they're sucking the control from everyone who loves them. Because people, parents or friends can't control it. There's no controlling that. If someone wants to do it, they can. They can find the means to do it, right?
Right. And they're going to, and that's the issue I think a lot of people have when it comes to this topic is like, well, what are we supposed to do? We know it's bad. We see these statistics. We see these kids in our everyday lives or whatever else, or more grown people who are still doing, we see people like this. What do we do about it? And I think that's a question that really is difficult to answer, especially when you want a direct, how do we stop this, Yeah. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, it's not up to anybody else except that person who's actively doing it. They have to want to stop. They have to want to see a change.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll have to admit, I've seen the aftermath of this in middle school. I think starting in middle school, where I saw my classmates have the scars or the marks on their arms or legs. And at the time, being immature, I guess, I didn't know what to do with that. So I kind of just pretended I didn't see it, And the message here is don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? How can someone, in your opinion, approach maybe if someone didn't come to them, say, hey, I need help. What if you just see it, right? What do you do?
It's definitely difficult because you don't want to just go up and be like, hey, are those what I think they are? And because that can be an automatic back into their shell. It's this person's going to ridicule me for my choice of doing this, And I think in my personal experience, I remember farther into high school. So this is after I had decided to stop and decided that, there needed to be something that changed. And I remember seeing a boy that had, these fresh enough cuts all up his arm. And as someone who had went through that and knew my mental state at that point when I was going through it then, it would have been easy for me to kind of just, turn away and be like, oh, that's upsetting. But something deep enough is going on in that person's life at the moment that seems like a valuable option for them. And someone needed to be told that. So I went to the guidance counselor and I was just like, hey, I just wanted to let you know this is what I saw. And the reason why I'm telling you is because I don't want to see it go any further to a point where he's not here anymore, And in no way is that telling on someone, is that snitching, is that anything like that. You're making sure that someone is hopefully going to get the help they need, or at least sometimes it's not an attention thing, but it is a cry for help, It's visible enough that people can see, and sometimes someone just needs someone to say something that it's not them saying it, Not everyone is going to feel comfortable asking for help, but if someone's like, hey, this is what I saw. And then they start to receive that.
Yeah.
That could be a turning point for them that they might not have had up until that point.
Yeah.
So definitely not making fun of people, definitely not, making jokes about it or being lighthearted about it, but looking at it as a very real and intense situation that needs something, you know?
That's such a good point, right? The mature thing to do is tell a professional that can handle the situation. You're not going to snitch, right? There's not like a snitching scenario where a lot of kids think. Definitely looking back, I should have done that, right? Seeing people going through that, because sometimes maybe they want people to see it so that they can get help, right? Maybe they don't have it in them to tell someone directly, but the scars tell people, right? The marks tell people that, hey, I needed some help, and maybe that's what they want. Maybe they want someone to say, hey, man, I see you. I'm here for you.
I see you're hurting, like, what can we do to help? That kind of thing. And, you mentioned when that happened for you, you were in middle school, you're young. When that happened for me, I happened to be a little bit older. I'd already gone through it. So I kind of knew what I wanted to do at that point. But being so young in middle school, and how you said, like, I didn't know what to do with that. I bet they don't know what they're doing with that either. It's just something they're doing. And when it comes to your friends and the people you're close with, and, oh, well, my friends help me. My friends are the ones that help me feel better. It's like, it's great to have that support system. It's fantastic to have friends that are there for you. But they are not professionals.
Yeah.
The same way you're confused and conflicted and dealing with that, they're going through maybe not the same thing, but they're conflicted and confused about their own stuff. And they're probably conflicted and confused about what you're doing, and trying to put that all on a young kid or anyone, even if they are telling you it's completely okay and they're here for you, it's like, you're not going to get to a point where you're actually doing better because they don't know how to work with that either. So it's very easy to just kind of rely on friends because they're not going to tell on you. They're not going to tell your parents, but there's only so much help you can get from that. And it can get to a point where it can start to harm them and their mindset as well, especially when you're so young.
Yeah. Yeah. The friend group scenario is a tough situation to be in, because sometimes people are enablers, right? They enable your habits, right? Because in some regards, it is a habit once it gets to the addiction phase, right? You just go to it. I wanted to bring this up because, since this podcast dives into sort of life, culture, and faith, being that you grew up Catholic, right, and you have a pretty solid foundation in your home, do you think sort of the upbringing contributed to some of that? By what I mean by is sort of being guilty from other things that led to that. Maybe I'm just assuming, but I don't want to assume or generalize here.
Right.
But was there some of that component?
I think to a point there may have been a little bit of that in the background. I was lucky enough to grow up in a church community and a family where it wasn't, you do something bad, you're going to hell. You do this and you're going to have eternal damnation. It's like, I grew up with this idea of, God loves you, you're a child of God, and, your body is a temple, and harming that or whatever else through whatever way is just not what you should be doing, and so I think it was a little bit more my views towards myself, which was, I hurt this relationship with this friend, or I really didn't do well on this test that I studied for, and my parents were hoping for me to do well, and so I feel like I deserve that. That's my punishment. And it's like, I remember distinctly being in certain situations where something happened and I was just sitting there, and my thought in my head was, I'm going to go home and I'm going to hurt myself because I deserve it, because I did this and that, and that's why this is what I should do. And that was me just justifying it for myself and rationalizing why it was okay. But I am lucky that it wasn't a church thing where I felt like, I need to punish myself because Jesus, it was very much internal of how I was viewing myself. And I think at that point, I wasn't viewing myself as a child of God, where my actions mattered and my views towards myself mattered. And it was just a lot of self-hate for not very good reasons, just everyday mistakes that kids make as they grow up. But I was just being so hard on myself to a point where it was just like, yep, and that's just how it goes,
Wow. Yeah. So going back to the seeking piece, we kind of, I guess, insinuated here that there's a dopamine rush. But what is it that people are seeking? Is it the adrenaline? Is it the punishment? A mixture of all the above? Can you dive into that a little bit?
I think, like I was saying before, for everyone it's a little bit different. And I personally was seeking like that gratification right there of I did something and I got something out of it, especially when I was feeling like I deserved it, especially when I was really sad about something or I really wasn't feeling good about a situation or whatever else. So that was what I was seeking. I know others that I've talked to in the past, they were seeking help at points where it was just I didn't know what else to do, and that was the drastic thing that I thought I needed to take to be able to get to a point where I could ask for help and it would be given. Just the distraction from like whatever's going on in your life. For me, I live in a happy home. I have good parents who love each other, and I have siblings who love each other, and we're all very close. But others don't come from something like that. Not everyone's as lucky to be able to grow up in that environment. So it can very much be an environmental thing, where how the home life is, how their relationship is with other people, and how they choose to cope with that is definitely something that people seek. And what am I going to get out of this? This is what I'm going to get out of that. So I definitely don't want to speak for everyone and because we're definitely trying not to be very general and put people into a box. But for me personally, that's definitely what I was seeking. And I don't doubt that it's similar in other cases as well.
Yeah, that's such a good point that you just made, because here's the driver. Any family can experience this. Any person can experience this. Any class of economic class, demographic, no one is exempt from this type of behavior, right?
I agree.
When they feel that, right? I mean, they can do it. You can access any of the means above,
right?
And even like what I'm hearing you say, even in a supportive family, this can happen. Because a lot of times people write it off. Oh, that was a loner. They, maybe they have a bad home. Maybe upbringing isn't there. But even the perfect family,
right,
they experience it.
Yeah, I think to a point when people think of self-harm, their first thought of the person doing it is wears all black and listens to screamo music and, is a rebellious kid. And that sometimes is the case. Yes, of course. But generalizing it into these types of people really just take away any other mindfulness you had towards anybody else and what they might be going through, because it's unfortunately so easy to hide them and to almost make it seem like it's not an issue, and to go to school and be all bubbly and be all happy. And it's really when you're just you with yourself, what are you doing during that time? And for me, going back to almost like the regret, like some of it comes from that too, because it's like I do live in such a good family, such a healthy, loving, supportive family who do nothing but support me and want to see me do the best I can in life and want to see me happy and all of that. So it's like, what happened with me where that was something I was a part of, when I have these parents who would do anything for me?
Yeah.
And it makes it, like I was saying, it makes it really easy to just generalize a group of people and move forward. But when you do that, you start to overlook these other people who are definitely going through something very same, if not more, and very similar, if not more. And then what do? Who do they have?
Yeah.
Because they don't have any eyes on them that are looking out for that specifically. And that's also saying that the people who wear our black and listen to screamo music, they don't all do that either,
Yeah.
So you're not going to always know.
Yeah.
But being able to see some of I don't know, some of the things that come from that, like wearing long sleeve and long pants in the summer and not feeling okay with taking that off or whatever else. It could be other problems, but also could be that. So just keeping in mind those like warning signs almost of like this is going on. But yeah, for me it's like I live in this great family. I'm part of this great church community. I have a great group of friends. You know, I'm doing well in school. I'm doing my best to keep up this social life, but there's also this going on.
Yeah.
And it's how did it get to that point where I was doing that, and with all of this around me, with all of these opportunities around me.
And at the time, you knew about that. Like, you knew about all these opportunities around you. What would you say to someone who's like, maybe someone doesn't have that experience? Maybe they're really struggling in life, and they say, oh, you had a silver spoon in your mouth. Not saying you did. I'm just generalizing here. Yeah. You know, I'm just giving up a what-if scenario. For those who think that, like, oh, people are born with silver spoons, they don't have those struggles. What do you have to say about that?
I think it's definitely good not to judge a book by its cover. And while that is very, like, cliche, and you hear that a lot growing up, it becomes even more true as you get older and you meet new people, more people, because you just don't know. You don't know someone's past with it. You don't know if someone's present with it. And so it's... Even though there are people who seem to grow up in such a great life and all of that, it doesn't mean that they don't have their own internal things that are going on. And that's where, like, mental health really comes into play too. Like, dealing with depression, especially, like, severe depression and anxiety and other, like, more serious things like schizophrenia and things like that is also something that comes into play. So regardless of how great the family life might be, this person has their own internal stuff going on within their own heads that is getting them to this point. And I think just the message there, it's you can't judge somebody just by how they present themselves, what they choose to wear, what they choose to listen to. It really takes knowing somebody and understanding someone's background, or at least more about them, to kind of see where they are in life and with themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a huge lesson that goes towards saying it doesn't matter what's happening externally. It really matters what's happening internally. In that person's mind, what they're going through emotionally, because a lot of times people, I mean, we live in America. I mean, let's face it, we have it pretty well here, you know, especially where we live, right? Let's be honest about that. But there's so many struggles of this in our community, you know. So it's easy to just say, oh, these types of people, they have it all, they can't complain, but it's still happening there, and no one's exempt, as we said. And what I want to ask you too is, on the religious context, right? A lot of people say, "Oh, go pray, say the rosary." In the Catholic context, go to church,
talk to your pastor,
which is good things to do. Yeah, is that enough?
No. And not saying, I would say no for both. It's not enough for them and their situation, but it's also not enough for us to be saying. It's not our place to be saying, oh, just pray about it and you'll be fine. You know, just give it up to God. And like you said, while those are great things to do, that's not gonna bring that healing that's needed at that moment. It might, but there has to be more that's done. And like we were kind of talking about before, it's really up to that person. So a parent, a friend, no one else can just be like, oh, you should just stop. It's simply not as easy as that. And what those people need, and what, you know, I needed to really kind of come out of it, and though it did take 5-6 years for me too, I had the support system. I had, you know, people who wanted to see me do better and get better. And eventually they got to a point where they understood that they couldn't just say stop. They just had to be there for me. And my mom, when I was talking to her about what we were talking about here in this topic today, she was like, I felt like I couldn't do anything. And the only thing I could do was pray. The only thing I could do was ask God to help my daughter. Because at that point, it wasn't her decision, it was mine. And I needed to get to a point where I was like, I need a change. I can't keep being negative.
Yeah.
I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my high school career, into my college career. I don't want to have so many scars, and then, one day my kids are asking about that and asking if I'm okay.
Yeah.
So it's like there had to be a time and place for me to stop, but it was my doing, just with everyone behind me wanting to see me get better. And that's what these people need. And that's what people need who are thinking about it, going through it, whatever. They need that support and that help, and not that quick, oh, well, just don't worry about it. Don't be sad about that. Just get over it. It's not that deep. But like we were saying, you have to know the person and learn the person and really figure out who they are and see who they are, before kind of just assuming like, well, your family's great. What do you have to be sad about? Yeah. And that's the attitude that I think pushes people away from wanting to get help, because their thought process is, I'm just gonna be like ridiculed. I'm just gonna be like, well, why don't you just stop? Like, oh, I would have thought of that sooner. So it's like, it's not enough for us to just say, pray about it, go to church about it. And it's not going to be enough for them to just do that. There has to be, professional help that comes into play sometimes. And I went to therapy for a while, and that was something that I did need to a point. But yeah.
So it's almost like when people say, go pray, go to church, whatever, it's almost like they're writing it off. It's not significant. Yeah. You don't really know me. You don't know what I'm going through. Is that sort of the mindset there when someone just says that to you, or anyone? It
almost feels like you're invalidating my feelings. Like I'm finally trying to say something. I'm finally trying to bring this issue that I've been having to light, and the first response I receive is, well, just, what's the problem? Why are you sad about that? That's dumb.
Yeah.
And then it's, oh, you're right. I probably shouldn't be talking to anybody about this. I'll continue to deal with it myself. But dealing with it yourself is just continuing that snowball of an addiction of, oh, this is fine. I'm not doing it as often. It's not as deep, or it could be worse. But it's something that it needs to be dealt with in a way that's honest, in a way that's, authentic, in a way that's being very, validating their feelings and understanding that while they might have all the stuff in the background, this is what they're feeling, so this is what we're going to focus on. Yeah. Versus, oh, but you have all of this, dude. Why do you need to do that? But yeah.
That's deep. So moving to overcoming this, it's tough. You said you battled it for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Which is, pretty long time. How does someone get over this temptation to perform self-harm?
I can definitely say that even now, at 20 years old, I've had moments where my first thought after something happened was, punish yourself for that. That shouldn't have happened. You need to take action and do this now. Even, years after not doing it at all. So it's I still have those thoughts the same way I feel many other people probably still have those thoughts. But it's finding those different outlets. I think was important for me. At least I was lucky enough to have music, lucky enough to have my friends and have writing and have whatever else. And unfortunately, some people aren't as fortunate to have those things or have those, hobbies or whatever else that they can focus and kind of direct their time to. That's not that. Mm-hmm. But I think finding those different outlets is really important, even if it's something as just going on a walk, when you're feeling like that. And just understanding that a lot of the pain that you're feeling now is not going to last forever, and that the things that you're doing now can. The scars will. And if you go that extra step and, to ending your life, that's permanent.
Yeah.
And it's painful for everyone around you, not just you. And it affects everyone around you. And it's important to keep that in mind as well. And I think for getting away from it, it's finding other things you can put your time into, understanding the things that make you feel like you have to get to that point, and kind of seeing like, oh, this is something that I probably would have wanted to do this after. How do I handle that differently? And that can be really hard to get into that mindset, and a good mindset, and doing it well. And relapses happen. And, you know, it's part of that growth of coming out of that and not being better, but getting better and healing. Professional help is a big thing, and that I think a lot of people at points are scared to go and do, because that's then admitting that they have a problem.
Yeah.
And that they need something more than just, you know, sleeping it off or talking to a friend. And that makes it, I think, a little bit more real, which is why I feel people kind of turn away from it. But it is important. And if you find the right person, whether it's a therapist, whether it's an inpatient thing, like, it can really be something that helps you move forward. And I wish that I was able to take therapy a little bit more seriously at that point, and really take advantage of it, and use it to the best of my ability. At that point, I just wasn't in a mindset where it was, you know, it made sense to me yet. But for anyone who's, you know, watching, listening, and you know anybody, or you yourself is, you know, you're going through something like this, there's always people that are here to help you, right? And it's, whether that's a friend, a parent, you know, the professional help we're talking about, whatever else, like, you have somebody, even when you feel completely alone. And that's something I wish I really kind of knew more of, or at least understood how real that was at that point.
Yeah. In the end, did self-harm do anything for you?
No. It gave me that instant gratification, and then from there it was just an act. It was just something I did. And an act as in, like, something I went, did, and then continue to do over and over again.
A cycle.
And so it definitely didn't do anything for me. It made certain things a little bit harder to kind of see the difference of right and wrong, and like that morals of, like, you know, this is fine. But if you have this idea, and we were talking about this earlier, if you have this idea that mutilating yourself and hurting your own body is okay, or is, you know, it's whatever, it's me, who cares? There's something wrong. And action needs to be taken there, before things start going down like a darker path that you then can't control. When you get older, that addiction starts going to other addictions like alcoholism and drug use and whatever else. But at the end of the day, no, self-harm did nothing for me. It didn't help me. It didn't help me get through any time any easier than it would have if I didn't. But I will say the only thing that I think I did take away from it is my ability to have this conversation, both here and with others, and, you know, look at my siblings and watch out for them, and pray that they never feel like they have to go about something like that. But just having a more open mindset and a little bit more knowledge into what self-harm is, to be able to just help other people, not be other people's therapist, but to be very honest about what it is and what it can lead to and what it does moving forward in your life. And I think that's the only reason why, if I could go back and change things, I wouldn't, is because now I feel like I can help people more than I could at that point when I was 13 and 12 confused, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't do anything, but it did give me a better sense of how to deal with it coming from other people, and my own like temptations at points.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing to see people overcome that, because then they can be the voice right now. On this podcast, you are the voice. We are the voice for people who may be thinking about this, going through this right now, or know someone who is. And this is crucial, because do you think saying this did nothing for me, do you think that's even enough? What would pierce the minds and the hearts of listeners who are contemplating this or going through this right now?
I think kind of what we were saying, like, just remember, like, you have people, you know, even if you're not in the best household or the most supportive household, like, you know, you have your friends or something. And you're right, like, just saying it did nothing for me isn't enough, because there can definitely be someone listening or watching or whatever who has this idea of like, well, it didn't do anything for her, but maybe for me it'll be different.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're bringing pain to yourself for, whatever your reasoning is. But when you really step back, like, what is it doing for you? Is this helping the situation, or is this just a release? And if it's just a release, there's other things that can be put in that place of that feeling. And so much easier said than done. And I heard a lot of this said to me when I was going through it, and it was just like, well, it wasn't even in like my ability to even like begin to try to put things in different, outlets and all of that. But it is important to remember that it's not going to be something that's going to help further you and better you into the future. It's going to hurt you and other relationships that are around you, especially people who care about you the most. Seeing you doing this, it's not necessarily a selfish thing, but it's more of people love you, people care for you, and they want to see you thrive. And this will not only make that difficult for you to be able to do that for yourself, but it'll also make it difficult, like how you view yourself moving forward and getting older, and what that energy kind of goes to later on when you can do things on your own and you're not under your parents' watch anymore. But yeah, this topic's really hard to have like a good conclusion to, because there's not just this easy phrase that can be said, or an easy thing that can be, sent out from here and people will be like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'll stop. At the end of the day, it's up to everybody else. But
yeah, it's their journey.
Yeah. And I hope that they understand that like other people have been on and are on this journey too.
Yeah.
And that you're not alone when it comes to this specific, topic of self-harm. And yeah, you're not alone. There's other people who are going through very similar things as you, and being strong and doing your absolute best to kind of forgive yourself and have love for yourself and have that self-love is very important, especially as you're growing up, because it can be very easy, especially as a kid, to just be like, have all these different thoughts that you're not really sure which is which anymore.
Yeah. I guess for a final message, it's that we here at Real Faith Conversations care about you.
Yeah.
Whoever's out there listening who needs to hear this, we care about you. There's always hope, and it can get better if you choose the journey.
Yeah.
So, like we said in the beginning, we do have this content is for mature audiences. We do have links to support websites and also a helpline. If you're in dire need, please call a professional through the helpline and seek out friendships in your local community. And please, 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 please seek out professional help. Thank you, Rachel, for talking about this heavy topic. Yeah. As always, thank you so much.